BYU takes down the Baylor Bears 99-94 in Waco to end a 4-game losing streak. The Cougars get big performances from AJ Dybantsa, 36 points for the star freshman, and a career-high 30 points for Rob Wright as he returns to Waco for the first time and takes down the Baylor Bears. And BYU stays above 500 in Big 12 play, improves to 6-5 this season in an important win for the Cougars to really get back on track. Is everything suddenly fixed for this BYU team? Not necessarily. There's still a lot to improve on, and Kevin Young is probably going to want to see some improved play on that defensive end. However, you just had to find a way to get a victory, and they did just that. I'm your KSL Sports BYU insider, Mitch Harper, with this post-game reaction for BYU's road win over Baylor. And again, you can never take for granted road wins in the Big 12 Conference, and to get them when you have the star performances. I've talked about it since the Houston loss. I think a lot of Cougar fans were panicking and just giving up on this team. When you have 3 guys that can put together big-time performances, as we saw on Tuesday night, BYU will always be a tough out. And the Cougars found a way, facing another double-digit deficit. 4th time this year, BYU storms back from a double-digit deficit to win a ball game. They were down 33-21 with 8:32 to go in the first half, and you never thought that Baylor was going to miss a shot. They were 11 of 13. I think the 2 misses were on 1 possession. Baylor was lights out. It was high-level basketball throughout. I mean, that's the Big 12. The Big 12 always delivers high-level basketball. We'll get to what took place around the league tonight, some crazy outcomes in the conference. We'll get to that a little bit later. But Tonde Yesufu for Baylor, 37 points, a career high for him. BYU once again giving up some big career night performances to opponents. You want to get that fixed, but Yesufu's going to be an NBA draft pick, and Cameron Carr as well. He's going to be an NBA pick, first rounder, probably like Yesufu. 24 points for him as well. It's kind of crazy, some of the numbers in this game for BYU. A little bit different profile to the way BYU got this victory. You would think with 99 points that this would be a game where BYU probably hit at least 10 3-pointers. Far from it. 3 of 19 from three-point range for BYU. 16% from beyond the arc. However, the Cougars posted a Kevin Young era high, 64 points in the paint. Baylor, by comparison, 40 points in the paint. Baylor hit 10 threes. They were 10 of 21 from beyond the arc, 48%, yet that wasn't enough for Baylor. BYU, I thought, was the more physical team in stretches in the second half. I thought the offensive rebounds in some key moments in the second half, which was a big issue against Houston. I thought BYU had some big second chance opportunities from Richie Saunders, Kennard Mood Davis. We'll get to him in a little bit, but a little bit different makeup, the way that BYU went about this. AJ Dybantsa and Rob Wright, though, I think those are the big stories here for this game. Rob Wright in his return, facing the chance of traitor, and he rose to the occasion and got it done. 30 points, 12 of 21 from the field. But I think the biggest thing here for BYU, for a team like BYU who's in the bottom 3 in turnovers in the Big 12, only 5 turnovers in the game for the Cougars. Rob Wright did have a late turnover. He only had 2 in the game, but that second one gave Baylor a little bit of life still late in the game. 5 turnovers, though, for BYU. That was impressive. Baylor is kind of middle of the pack in terms of generating turnovers in the Big 12, but they're one of the worst at giving it up, and that showed itself on Tuesday night. Baylor, 13 turnovers. Some of them were not necessarily BYU's defense. Baylor had a couple possessions, even in the first half when they were flying high, hitting every shot. They just sailed it to BYU's bench. High passes that just sailed out of bounds. There was one, too, that hit the ref and stayed in bounds, and BYU gathered that one. BYU had 24 points off of turnovers, off the 13 turnovers from Baylor. So big night for BYU because the Cougars have not been great when it comes to generating turnovers, one, but then getting some easy buckets. It was a little bit of a profile like Arizona, where not many threes, but you're getting to the paint and getting downhill. It was a little bit of that makeup for BYU, the way that the Cougars went about their business tonight. Imagine if they're hitting their threes. Imagine if BYU, they had 19 attempts, which is far different than Arizona. Imagine if the Cougars hit 9 threes in this game. They go for like 110 potentially in this game against Baylor. Huge offensive output from BYU. The big three combined for 81 points. Richie Saunders chipped in with 15 points, 6 of 14 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. Another kind of lackluster performance from beyond the arc from Richie. He's had those this season where he's been up and down, but I just thought it was a great performance for Rob Wright, a career high for the sophomore guard who had his best performance as a BYU Cougar, and it comes against his old team. You know, Scott Drew was talking earlier this week about players are going to come and go. It's this era of college basketball, but you don't want to see it happen when, as he put it, sign a contract. So he put that out there, and you got to think that added a little bit of a fire to Rob Wright and this team, and even AJ Dybantsa said in the postgame that they wanted to get this win for Rob Wright, just like they wanted to get that win against Utah at the Huntsman Center for Keba Keita and Richie Saunders back in January for that one. So there was a little bit extra emotion for this one, but ultimately it wasn't about Rob versus his old program, because really there was no guys on this team that had any connection to Rob Wright. I think Cameron Carr was a mid-year addition last year for Baylor and maybe got to know Rob Wright a little bit, but it's a completely new Baylor team, and they had no connection with him. And so it wasn't really about that per se, but I think that Rob just wanted to kind of stick it to those fans a little bit and get the win. That was ultimately what BYU needed. Is BYU suddenly fixed and looking like a team that's going to go to the Final Four? No, I'm not saying that at all. I think that BYU, though, what I've said since the Houston loss this past weekend, because I do believe there was progress made in that Houston loss, that BYU is still a team you don't want to face in the first weekend because of the firepower they have at the top of the rotation. I mean, AJ Dybantsa makes everything that looks effortless. 36 points on 20 shots, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. Think back to what I was saying in Allen Fieldhouse a couple weeks ago. I'm in Lawrence, and AJ in that game had 1 assist. But I noted in that game, I was like, guys got to hit shots. They've got to knock down shots for AJ because he's finding the guy. He will pile up the assist. And it wasn't necessarily 3-point shots this time around. It was inside the arc, and he found ways to get to his teammates. I thought AJ was fantastic. He's only getting better and better, and you can always rely on him. Him and Rob Wright played the entire game, 40 minutes. And you know what? That might have to be the blueprint going forward. It just might have to be. And it's tricky, and you got to manage your timeouts effectively. And I thought Kevin Young did. You know, he called that timeout 33-21. They're down with 8:32 to go in the first half. That was big. It was a good timeout because BYU quickly followed that timeout with a 5-0 run, and they got it down to a 7-point deficit. You know, Kevin Young is still learning college basketball and all the different venues and the different settings and the different structures of these road games. And this is all new, too, where BYU is a circled opponent for everyone that they face. You know, Baylor came into this one needing a big-time win to, one, boost their NCAA tournament hopes, because they're clearly outside the bubble right now. They haven't won a game and still haven't won a game against a top 25 team this season. They wanted a signature victory. And then you add the Rob Wright element. It was an energized crowd with a lot of BYU fans, mind you. It sounded like you could hear the Cougar fans cheering during that broadcast, but it was a hyped up crowd to want to take down Rob Wright and Baylor. So there's a little bit different energy and intensity on the road for BYU this season compared to last year or some of the past games that BYU's had on the road. And I think Kevin Young is learning when he needs to take his timeouts, because in the NBA, you're not facing regular season road environments where fans are yelling traitor, Maybe sometimes when you have a superstar facing his old franchise, maybe a little bit of that, but that's just not the thing in NBA compared to college. And I thought that KY took some appropriate timeouts, and those timeouts are going to be crucial because you need all 40 minutes with Rob Wright and AJ Dybantsa. You need them on the floor at all times. Because when those guys go out, there's a dip in production. There's a dip in performance. And the margins, as Kevin Young has laid out, are so thin in the Big 12. You got to make sure to take care of those guys, and they got to stay the course. And is it going to be a case where they're worn down come March? You hope not. I'd like to think that Saturday against Colorado could be an opportunity where BYU could get a little bit of a cushion and give those guys some rest, in the last 7 minutes or so. But you're going to need these guys for pretty much every minute possible if you want to continue to climb the seed lines. I don't know if tonight was necessarily a seed climber, but I think it entertains the possibility of being a 5 seed compared to a 6 seed or a 7 seed going forward in bracketology. 2 players scored 30 points or more in a game for BYU for the first time since January 14th, 1984, when BYU took down Utah 113-105 in the Marriott Center in double overtime. That was Devin Durant dropping 34 and Brett Applegate hitting 32. In that game, Scott Sinek, he hit a buzzer beater in the first overtime to send it to the second OT, and then I think Applegate kind of sealed the deal late in that one to give BYU that victory in double overtime against the Utes. So we're seeing stuff that hasn't happened in 42 years. That's what happened tonight between AJ and Rob Wright. Pretty special stuff that the Cougars are having. And I think, again, that's where the doom and gloom about the 4-game skid. Yes, it's crazy that BYU drops 4 in a row. That Oklahoma State game, that was inexcusable. But still, this is a team where if you are a 6 seed, that 3 seed isn't going to want to face you. Now, BYU probably doesn't want to have to deal with a 3 seed. They want to have a higher seed to not have to deal with that caliber of team in the first weekend. But still, BYU is going to be a tough out when they are clicking and they are operating at high level as they were against Baylor on Tuesday night. I really was impressed with the strong close to in the first half. It was very similar to the Oklahoma State game. In fact, it was the same score. BYU closed the first half on an 8-1 run, and it was tied at 41, just the same score as it was in Stillwater. In fact, the final score tonight was darn near close to what it was in Stillwater, only BYU came out on the winning side of things. Tonight was 99-94. The loss in Stillwater was 99-92. And BYU, I thought, came out relatively strong in the second half. They did get down 45-41, but AJ Dybantsa, that dunk he had, amazing stuff. Incredible. And he makes it look effortless. That slam dunk to get BYU back within 2. And then a little bit later, he had a wild reverse layup and one that was just insane. Miles Simon of the TV broadcast was blown away. Just AJ makes the incredible look effortless. And he's such an incredible talent. And again, I've been watching every minute of him. And I'm thinking to myself, how is he not the number 1 pick? And then you follow it up with Darren Peterson was out last night with the flu. And look, he's had a go. He's had the hamstring. He's had the ankle. He's had the flu. I mean, he's went through it. But AJ's went through his things too. I mean, he took some hard falls in January against TCU, and he kept battling, and he never is out. And I just think what he does, BYU needs all 36 from AJ tonight. He always delivers. And it was just impressive to see that. I like BYU's defensive effort and stretches in the second half. Again, the 94 points total, not ideal. You're going to want that number to get down, when you get closer to March. But I liked in the second half before the under-16 media timeout, the defense blocked 2 3-point shots by Baylor. And the Cougars go into the under-16 with a lead. And I thought that was huge to kind of make it feel like, again, this is different than Stillwater. Yes, the score was the same at the midway point, but this is a completely different feel than what was happening at Oklahoma State a week ago. Hadim Boop, we haven't got to him yet, but I thought he was big in this game for BYU. Hadim Boop plays a lot of minutes. He played let's see, what was the final number? 27 minutes for Hadim Boop. He had a plus 12, tied for a team high in plus minus with plus 12. BYU this season is 5-1 in games where Hadim Boop plays 20 minutes or more in a game. And Hadim Boop is a impactful guy. He brings a lot of energy to this team. I think that he does earn more minutes in this rotation. Bidu Ahmed, I thought for that matchup against Houston, I thought he was the right matchup. In this matchup, Baylor's a little bit of a smaller front court. It made a lot of sense to stick with Boop because Keita was dealing with foul trouble, and they kind of rode the hot hand. But Boop gives you 27 minutes. He gets 10 boards. He gets a block shot. He gets a steal. I thought he did a really nice job. He had some possessions, too, where he had great defense late in the game. He had a great defensive stand that led to a turnover, and Rob Wright got downhill, had a scoop and score for a bucket. Boop was impactful, and he earned a lot more minutes, I think, going forward. He has to. He's an impactful player, and he does give you the element to shoot the three. Now, he did attempt a three that was bad. It was the side of the board. It was not pretty in that first half. Still, Kansas game, he knocked down a three. The Oklahoma State game, he hit a three. He can do it. He can knock down those three-point shots. So going forward, I want to see more Boop in this rotation. And again, maybe it could be a case of depending on the matchups, and this was probably the right matchup for Boop. When you get a little more physical, bigger bigs, Bidu is perfect. But again, there's versatility with Keita, with Boop, with Bidu. I like the optionality that you have. And I will say with Keita, too, even though he was dealing with foul trouble, I liked his early start. It was his only bucket of the game, but just to kind of get off the snide early. I know it was only one bucket, 2 points in total for Keita, but I thought, again, first touch, it's a nice entry pass from Richie Saunders early in the game, and Keita just finishes it. Because against Houston, he could not finish any of those. And I just think, again, when you're projecting forward into the future, just, again, a little bit of a confidence boost, like, hey, I still got it. I still got my touch. I can do this. So I like that about Keita. But the 4 fouls, though, he's got to take care of avoid the fouls. He was out early in this game with 4 fouls. For BYU, too, I thought another big stretch was AJ counters Yesufu's three-pointer. Yesufu knocks down a three, and AJ counters it to get BYU back up 7 at 63-56. I thought that was a big sequence in this game. The Boop defense, as I noted, led to a Baylor turnover, and Rob has a flip and score, and it's 65-56 at the under 12. That was some big sequences, I thought, for the Cougars in that spot. And then at the under 8, BYU suddenly has a double-digit lead at 11 points. I really was impressed with the play of Kennard Moo Davis. He got an and one that got BYU up by 17 with 5 minutes to go, and they were rolling. I thought BYU's going to win this game by 20. And then, coming out of the under 4-minute timeout, there was a great design for AJ to just get downhill and get to the rim and an ATO. BYU had Baylor down 14, but that was a similar spot to Iowa State. Iowa State was up 14 with 2.5 minutes to go on Baylor, and Baylor made a go at that thing and only lost by 3 in Ames. So kind of similar deja vu moment again for Baylor. So they weren't out of the weeds. I did think, though, BYU should have won this game decisively, and I didn't feel like BYU was going to lose this game, but I think they made it closer than they needed to, because after that bucket from AJ, Baylor gets a quick 5-0 burst that included that one of 2 Rob Wright turnovers. Richie then, he had a huge offensive rebound after a missed AJ Dybantsa 3-point attempt, gets BYU back up 11, which I thought was huge because in that spot, that could have put, Baylor with a chance to get it down to 7. BYU's up then a little bit later, 90-83. Rob Wright misses the front end. Saunders gets another big board, goes to the corner for a 3 and fires it up. Look, they're up 7 with a minute to go. Why did he shoot that? Because if he holds on, kills clock, they're fouling, and you're going up 9, at worst 7, but you're probably going up 8 or 9. that would have been a blowout, and BYU runs away with this thing. But he fires that up. It goes out of bounds, hits the top of the board, and Baylor's got a puncher's chance, and they kind of extended it. Baylor was silly, though, down the stretch. With about 13 seconds to go, they didn't attempt a three. They kept trying to go at the rim. They almost drew an and one with Carr, but they didn't fire up threes. They needed to put up a three. They just kept going to the rim, and BYU was fine with them going for twos. That's going to be fine. Moo Davis, I thought he did a great job late, going to the foul line and hitting those free throws. He had 4 straight that were big for BYU. I thought it was a nice game for Moo. He goes in double digits scoring, 12 points, 6 of 7 from the free throw line, 3 of 6 from the field, 3 boards. That offensive rebound I thought was big to set up an and one. I like that play from Moo Davis. I thought defensively in the first half, I thought he was giving up a little bit too much cushion to allow their Baylor, the three-point shooting to kind of go off, but I thought it was a good night for Moo Davis and one that BYU can build off of and hopefully, again, create some momentum because I think they should be able to win on Saturday. And then next week with a 2-game win streak, potentially, if you take care of business against Colorado, you should just go into Tucson loose. Just play with nothing to lose and everything to gain against the Arizona Wildcats next week. But you got to take care of business coming up on Saturday against Colorado. 2 p.m. tip at the Marriott Center. I think the game's on FS1 and, of course, on KSL News Radio. BYU remains in the 8th spot in the Big 12 conference standings after tonight. Kind of a wild night in the Big 12. Houston takes care of business against Utah 66-52 in the Huntsman Center. Emmanuel Sharp becomes the all-time leading three-point shooter in Houston history. That's big time. Arizona State takes down Oklahoma State 85-76. Again, the Pokes, that was a bad loss by BYU. And I think that further pushes them back in the bubble talk. They were kind of next 4 out territory. Arizona State's not awful. They're honestly much better than their record shows, Arizona State. But still, you got to go into Tempe and win for a team that's got basically a lame duck coach, it feels like, in Bobby Hurley. That's a missed opportunity by Oklahoma State. Bad loss, I think, for them. And then TCU pulls off the stunner of the night. They take down Iowa State, who was absolutely steamrolling everyone after their 2-game skid they had a few weeks back. TCU 62, Iowa State 55. I don't understand TCU one bit. I do not understand them at all. They gave BYU everything they could handle in January. It was a 76-70 win for BYU. TCU nearly beat Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse. They beat Baylor twice, home and away. They nearly took down Michigan. Then they lose to Notre Dame. They lose to Colorado. They hung tough with Houston. Like, are they an NCAA tournament team? They're 15-9, 5-6 in Big 12 play. They've got some decent wins. They beat Florida, who's 5 in KenPom right now. They beat Wisconsin, who BYU also beat. They had a nice win tonight. Wisconsin took down Illinois. TCU, I can't figure out to save my life, but that's a win that probably puts them back into the bubble territory, I would think, with getting a signature victory like that over Iowa State. Next up for TCU is Saturday at Oklahoma State in what's suddenly a bubble-licious game in the Big 12. BYU, of course, will host the Colorado Buffs on Saturday, 2 p.m. on KSL. Pregame begins at noon with Cougar Sports Saturday. I'll get you ready for tip-off between the Cougs and the Buffs. First time Colorado comes to Provo since 2016. Remember last year, that was a big win for the Cougars, taking down Colorado in Boulder. That almost saved the season. So they'll look to get a second straight win over Colorado and a second straight win this week in Big 12 play. But that's going to do it for this post-game reaction to BYU's win over the Baylor Bears, 99-94. The Cougars now are 18-6 overall, 6-5 in Big 12 play. We will be back tomorrow with more Cougar Tracks to unpack this game and talk some BYU football as well, right here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page.